IT Insights InsurTalk. Interviews with insurance leaders about what matters to the industry.
Hi, I'm Eva Banaś. Welcome to another episode of IT Insights InsurTalk series by Future Processing. Delegated authority holds great significance within the London market, serving as a cornerstone in the landscape of risk underwriting. Data control, in return, is crucial in this area, especially considering data cleansing, data transformation in real time, as well as data reconciliation. Today, together with Dave Connors, founder and CEO of distriBind, we will discuss the role of delegated authority within the insurance market with the special focus on data. Dave, excited to have you here with me today at Lloyd's.
Hi, Eva. Thank you for having me. I'm glad to be here.
Glad to have you here. Dave, I heard you are a tennis fan. Is there any tennis star that if you had one chance to see live, you would go to this match no matter what?
So I only really started playing tennis in the last year, and I used to watch it a bit more. But I didn't really get into it until after Federer had retired.
Okay.
So I would want to go see him when he was at his peak.
So I guess your special wish would be time machine.
A time machine.
To go and see him.
I would need it for a lot of reasons, but that would be one.
one point on the bucket list, I guess.
Yeah, for sure.
to check. And how did you actually end up in insurance?
So like most people, certainly from my age and older, I fell into it really. So where I grew up in Gloucester, which is a small city in the southwest of England, there's really not a lot there apart from insurance and kind of manual labor. And I was far too lazy for manual labor, so I chose insurance really.
Mm-hmm. And how did distriBind happen?
So my insurance career really kind of formed of two parts. So the bit that might be called the business part, where I was an insurance technician, did some underwriting, did some claims, and then started working for a small consultancy. And then I started working more in kind of business analysis and functional design, and started working for some vendors. And throughout that, I'd done a lot of work in delegated authority, a lot of work in outwards reinsurance, and really kind of seen a lot firsthand of problems of, the reliance on spreadsheets and poor data exchange, poor data visibility, people not really being sure, or insurers not being sure what they were on risk for, arguments over claims, arguments over commissions, all this sort of stuff. And really kind of feeling that is a problem that had never been solved. And really the approaches that were out there were never going to solve it because they were coming at it completely from the kind of wrong tack. And feeling that, it's going to sound quite immodest, but because I feel my kind of perspective of seeing it from both sides, both from the kind of business and the tech side, was a relatively unique experience, and that I had some sort of different insight into it, and we could take a different approach and could do it differently. So I was kind of mulling that for a little while, and I sort of reached the point where I sort of thought, I wasn't a particularly entrepreneurial person, but I just thought that I could forgive myself if I tried and failed, but I couldn't forgive myself if I didn't try.
It's better to regret trying than not trying.
Exactly that, yeah.
Yeah, that's always the best approach to develop anything really, and to experience anything.
Yeah, and I really, it's just an area that I just thought,
why not?
It couldn't carry on as it was, and I didn't think it was going to be, and nothing out there seemed to be even touching it in the right way.
I see. Thank you for this introduction and for this background. So how important is delegated authority within the London market?
I mean, it's crucial. So I think certainly within Lloyd's in particular, it's a little over 40% of the overall market gross premium is written under delegated authority.
And here at Lloyd's, what's the percentage?
Yeah, so Lloyd's is about 40%, and I think in the broader London market, it's probably similar. And one of the things I often say, though, that annoys people,
I
is
love
that
this kind of stuff.
it is actually delegated authority is more important to Lloyd's than Lloyd's is to delegated authority. If you look at the global delegated authority premium, it's huge. And I think the market for kind of program business in the US is like nearly $100 billion. So that's one of the things that we've come at, is that idea that you cannot be externalizing a particular data standard outside of this market. And that's one of the areas that I think needs to evolve from in delegated authority in general, but whether it's in the London market or wider, that there needs to be more efficient models of data exchange.
And you already mentioned your history and how it all began with distriBind. So my question would be, how did the process actually look like 5 years ago?
So it's very probably similar to how it looks today, unfortunately.
Okay.
But I mean, it's very heavily reliant on a spreadsheet that would be sent at the end of every month, sometimes every quarter. So you have the MGA will sell the insurance policy. They will then, at the end of the month, well, typically a week or two into the next month, actually. So we're filming this on the 14th of November, right? So it will be about now that the MGAs will be sending to their brokers the list of all the policies that they sold in October. The broker will then send that to the insurer. At some point, they'll probably also be sending the premiums they collected in October that probably relate to risks that were sold in September or even earlier. And then again, sending that on to the broker. The claims will also be coming in. So it'll be potentially 3 separate spreadsheets. If you look at it could be hundreds of columns wide, that spreadsheet. It's called a bordereau, hundreds of columns wide, hundreds, potentially thousands of rows, depending on how many transactions on it. So the ability for any one insurer to see what they're actually on risk for, to see, if you think about, if you took, let's say a home insurance policy that might have got sold in January and amended in October, for the insurer to see that connection is very, very difficult. And I think that it's a very slow, very manual process. If there's something in that spreadsheet that shouldn't be there, so a risk that was sold, maybe the limit was wrong, maybe it's in the wrong territory, the wrong type of business, very, very difficult to see any of that.
The volumes of data are enormous, basically, from what you're saying. And I was wondering, how important are data standards in delegated authority?
So I'm probably the worst person to ask that question, because I genuinely believe that data standards are one of the things, or the attempt to enforce a common data standard is one of the things that has held the progress of delegated authority in the London market back.
Really?
Yeah. So, I mean, I think that too often there's a focus on the semantics of particular headers, what a field is, rather than looking at the structure of insurance and what something does. So the example I often give, and I've done a presentation on this, was like if you put a picture of a biplane and a jumbo jet on one side and a mouse and a whale on the other side, and you say, well, which of those two things are actually more similar? It's the mouse and the whale, because underlying it, they have the same structure, the mammalian skeleton. You cannot take a biplane and scale it up to a jumbo jet. And I think too often, and particularly, it's a mistake that the Lloyd's market has made a few times, is they will try to build a market-wide solution by determining a standard for a specific territory and class of business. It nearly always starts with North American property, and then they will try to bolt on the extra bits and the extra bits and the extra bits, and then they hit a dead end and they start again. And I think one of the things that is actually needed is the flexibility to understand that it's the structure that matters, and what comes in, however somebody is calling it, what the behavior should be. And that is that is the key. And that kind of goes back to what I said earlier about delegated authority being more important to Lloyd's than Lloyd's is to delegated authority. If they try to externalize their standard out to the rest of the world, whereas, you know, the premium in the Lloyd's market for delegated authority is dwarfed by just the program business in the US, trying to enforce that standard out to US MGAs, US brokers, who will have a lot more delegated authority business outside of Lloyd's than they have in, is one of the things that has damaged the Lloyd's market. I believe in internal standards, so you should have like an internal consistent standard. So within Lloyd's, we know, yeah, this thing is always this thing is always that. But it's the externalization of that out that I think is the problem, has been the problem.
That's an interesting take on that.
I'm probably, unfortunately, in a very small minority in that belief, but I think that is one of the things that, no, I think it's an important distinction to make. What I'm saying is that it's not. So I've had conversations with prospects as well. One that really sticks out with me, and this was non-Lloyd's, non-London market actually, but this was about 2 or 3 years ago. And they said they'd done a project. They were an insurer, and they'd gone out to all of their MGAs over a period of about 18 months, trying to enforce a particular spreadsheet. So this is what you must send us. And they said we may as well have not bothered, because obviously all of these MGAs use different systems, have different things, and they were just sending what they could produce anyway. So when everything came in, they were then having to manually manipulate that until it looked a bit like what they wanted. Whereas what's actually needed is a kind of flexible tool that can sit and receive whatever the sender needs to send and turns it into what the receiver wants. So whether that's transformation, enrichment, whatever it may be, but that can do that. And I think that, sort of jumping around here, but I think the London market is the only example I can think of that has used tech as a barrier rather than an enabler. So if you think about banking, PSD2, you can sit there with an app from one bank account or one bank and have your accounts from any other bank in that app. Whereas, you know, the London market has used the standards and used tech to say, well, no, if you can't send it through this gateway, if you can't send it in this way, you can't do business here. And it's the opposite of what they should be doing.
I see your point, definitely. And what are the challenges in data ETL specific to delegated authority? You already touched upon this one a bit, but maybe some other also stand out.
I think that is the main challenge, is that understanding of just how different everything is. And if you look at probably brokers, the only part of the value chain where there's kind of reasonably homogenous, in the sense of, obviously, yeah, there's massive ones like your Aons and Guy Carps, and there's smaller brokers, but there's been so much consolidation there. They're all of a reasonable size, certainly in the London market. But if you went out to the MGAs, there will be the huge global tech accelerated, writing billions of dollars MGAs. There are new insurtechs who are small, not writing a lot, but again, very, very tech oriented. And then there are kind of older, smaller, opposite of tech oriented. There's still, everything is spreadsheet, everything is manual, some is still even handwritten. And then on the carrier side, you have everything running from, again, modern digital underwriting platforms to legacy green screen. So the challenge of taking all of these different data sources and sending them to all these different types of recipient, that is where the biggest challenge is. And again, that's where it comes back to the flexibility needed to be able to, again, not use tech as a barrier, not to say, well, everything, the ideal would be like real-time API. And you say, well, we're always going to take it real-time API from the MGA, effectively bypass the broker. Really, you can give them the data, but you don't need to go through them. It just goes straight through to the carrier, again, real time. It'd be wonderful. But there's so many reasons why that can't happen and it won't happen. But you need to be able to go, for those that can do that, wonderful. For those that can't, here's the same process, but that we will enable in a different way. And that might be, again, it comes in digitally, but stops and becomes a spreadsheet, becomes a whatever feed to an EDW something, or it comes in as a spreadsheet, comes in as a PDF, comes in as XML, but can then go out via API or can go out in some other form. And I think that level of flexibility to say, actually, we recognize all the disparity of like tech sophistication, of budget, of size throughout that entire value chain. But we recognize what actually matters is it the right quality of business that we want? Is it going to make us an underwriting profit? Does it hit our other kind of strategic objectives? That's kind of what really matters.
And where would you put delegated authority in the context of Blueprint 2?
I mean, it's obviously a very crucial part of Blueprint 2. And I think, again, I have my doubts, again, about whether the actual approach that they're driving is the correct one. There definitely needs to be, again, I'll say an internal standard, an internal consistent repository. How that data gets in, where that data comes in from, I think that's the bit where Lloyd's needs to be a bit more open-minded, a bit more imaginative. And I think they need to get past the obsession with externalizing their own standard.
So Dave, we've been through the past, we've been through the present, and what's the future? What's the art of possible?
Pretty much everything just said at a risk of repeating myself. I mean, certainly, at some point, it will become closer and closer to that real-time transactional API. But there won't be a big bang, for so many reasons, because, an insurer isn't going to get rid of good business. And if the MGA that isn't particularly tech sophisticated is bringing them good business, they're not going to turn that away. And particularly, again, if you look at the Lloyd's market, the majority of the managing agents will have Lloyd's, and then they'll be part of a company that has non-Lloyd's as well. And even if they get to a point where they can't do it through Lloyd's, they'll just move it to the non-Lloyd's paper. They won't turn that business away. And similarly, they're not going to. Some of the insurers aren't going to suddenly switch off their legacy systems. So there will always have to remain that flexibility. It's going to be a kind of curve rather than a switch off. But it will move more and more towards the digital, to more and more towards the real time. It's just whether that is a horizon of 5 years, 10 years, 15 years, I don't know. I hope it will be at the shorter end of that end. But I think, I mean, there are insurance companies out there that will be running like 50-year-old mainframes. And that they'll still be running some of the stuff, some of the new stuff today might still be being run in 50 years' time as well. So it won't be a suddenly bang, it's all like this. It's going to evolve, but I think it's going to move more towards that kind of faster, more flexible data exchange.
With this kind of processes, it always takes time.
Yeah.
But it is the flexibility that matters in the terms of like the pace it happens.
I think it's exactly that, and it's recognizing that like everyone will move at a slightly different pace, and I think it is making sure that you can harmonize a process without forcing everyone to do the same thing or forcing everyone to like move at the same speed. And I think having that flexibility of the tools to do that is what will be key to the success.
Yeah, and it seems like this is the vision of the future, we would all wish for.
I think so. And I think, there's definitely movements towards that already.
Mm-hmm. Good to hear that then.
Yeah.
Thank you, Dave, for sharing all your stories and insights today with us.
No
and
problem.
Thank you, our audience, for listening to another episode of IT Insights InsurTalk series by Future Processing. See you next time.
IT Insights talks on business and IT challenges with tech leaders. Visit us at itinsights.tech and dive into our podcasts, webinars, and events.